Well, well, well.
Here we are.
Here we are. I think this has been a long time coming, isn't it?
Yes, that's true. You're going to make it through this?
I don't know, because the problem is with us, we have such a laugh, don't we? I don't actually know how we get any work done.
Exactly.
Because it's just like constantly joking around. If you don't know this human being, which shocks me if you don't, this is one of the best tenors in the world, Charles Castronovo. Also one of my very good friends.
That's right, absolutely.
Aren't I?
Yes, of course.
Act like it. How's it going?
Yeah, it's going fine. I had a performance of Don Carlos last night, which you were there.
Yes, it was smashed.
Long opera.
It was a lot.
Difficult.
No, it was great. It went really
it's
well.
An amazing piece. So next day after, it's always a little bit relaxed. But you're making me work again. But that's how we're friends.
So I'm going to ask you some questions.
Okay.
But I'm terrible because I meant to learn them, but I just don't have time. Will you forgive me?
I do.
Oh,
no
thanks.
problem.
The thing is, you and I are releasing an album of Tosti songs, which you got me into Tosti. I'd done some Tosti when I studied, but I'd never really gone into a huge amount of detail with his music. The thing is about Tosti songs, sometimes they're seen as sentimental or as salon music.
Yeah.
But I think they also demand great artistry. What do you think is the key to elevating the interpretation with them?
I would say the most general answer for that would be just honesty. If you approach them in a very honest and earnest kind of way with feeling, and you take them seriously, it's not a Heilige Kunst thing, whatever, Debussy or Schubert or something. When you approach them very honestly, then that's when I think the real truth and beauty comes out of this music. Because Tosti, he wrote a lot of songs.
He did.
And of course you have the famous ones that all the famous singers do, especially the tenors and everything, and they feel popular in a way.
Yeah.
And I think the reason is because he was such a great writer of melody, but there's a lot of pathos and a lot of depth. And perhaps he's not Liszt on the piano, so he doesn't write the piano part, for example, that is with 5,000 colors. But there's something about the simplicity, in my opinion, which rings very true. I know that there's a certain kind of honesty there. There's no bravado in a way.
Actually, I think a big part of it is he often would perform both singing and playing.
Oh.
And I think he made the piano parts more simplistic to play so that he could do both with ease.
Yeah.
And also because when you play Tosti songs, the melodies are often doubled.
Yes.
With the voice. You have to be really flexible all the time. I feel Tosti is really about making the singer sound as beautiful as they can.
I mean, I think it's definitely vocal forward, as we say, because the emphasis is more on the melody and tones you can get out of the timbre of the singer's voice and everything. It's very easy to bring the voice out and without excess of going on, let's say in the piano or something like that. But I never found that to be something that puts it on a lower level. It's a different style, it's a different focus, and I find most of the time, for example, that's why I love Verdi more than other composers. There's sometimes a simplicity. If he can create so much emotion with boom, blah, blah, boom, blah.
Yeah.
I mean, that's genius to me.
Yeah.
I mean, you can have every instrument playing at the same time. It's amazing. But with simplicity, sometimes that's almost the highest form of emotion and art, in my opinion.
Yeah,
so I think Tosti is more in that vein. So
I think it requires, more imagination in a way.
Yeah.
Because what you get on the page is very similar to Schubert sometimes. Yeah. It can seem very, very simple.
Yes.
So then the mistake a lot of people can make is they just read exactly what's on the page and they don't really take a risk of taking some creative interpretation with it.
Well, it does leave it open for you can show more of your personality in a way, musically, artistically, vocally. And I think that's what's very interesting about it. So I don't find it in any lower position, even from the great composers of songs, which is very interesting. I love it. Yeah.
I think it's so perfect for your voice.
It's kind of like the Italian tenor kind of thing. You need to do. There is a big tradition of it too. Everyone from Caruso to Bergonzi, everyone performed these songs and recorded them. So for me, I had to do it. So I'm really glad we did it together too, because it was it's a really good combination of being free and happy. It has to have a good vibe to create this music honestly, I think. So that's the main thing. There's nothing scholarly about it. It has to be very, very natural.
I loved it. We had a great old time, didn't we?
It was so fun, yeah.
It was great. We had a ball. We always do, but it was funny.
We laughed through half of the takes.
I know. I don't even know how we get through things sometimes, because we're just mucking around all the time. It's crazy.
Exactly.
Are you like that all the time?
I'd rather be that way. Fun. It takes too much energy to be too serious. It's better to be relaxed.
It is true. We had a great time making those recordings, and we've got some other projects in the pipeline.
Yeah, a lot of ideas.
Exciting times. What I love when we work together, you never do the same thing twice.
Gotta keep you on your toes.
You do. I'm on them, and I'm like, when I'm not pedaling. But you do, and I like it. I have to listen like absolute mad, because some singers, which is also lovely, like to rehearse so much, and they want to do loads of rehearsals, every detail pre-planned. You very much are your spontaneous colour and feeling on the day and in the moment when we do, I'm not sure if it's the same for the opera or not, but certainly I feel when we do the songs together, it's in a good way what we're going to get on the day. Because then I think that's good. We react to each other.
Well, I think that comes from me being mostly on the stage singing roles. And every time you do a performance in a big role, for example, like Don Carlos, how the music goes. You basically try to create the same thing. You don't take so much liberty that the conductor has no idea what you're doing. But each performance is quite different. One night you might hold something a little longer. One night you might do a piano that you didn't do before. So I think when I approach these songs, I feel like I'm always in the mode of the stage.
As a collaborative pianist, I'm obviously absolutely fascinated between the dynamic of a singer and a pianist, and I do so much lieder and art song. It's really my specialism. And how do you approach working with a pianist as opposed to working with an orchestra in an opera?
Well, of course, the contact is much more intimate, which is the main thing. Because even when you rehearse, 3 weeks for the opera, and you're working with the conductor every day, they're giving you notes, try this, and they're asking you, do you breathe there? And there's a lot of collaboration, of course. But once you have that pit in between you, and once you're moving on stage, you have your colleagues, your costumes, this set and that set, the distance becomes greater, even if it's not physical. Of course, you have the pit, which already causes some disturbance in the connection. You cannot sit there looking at the conductor the whole time when you're acting. But in recital form, you don't lose that. So even it does. You don't have to look at each other, but you're in such close proximity that even just a breath, the pianist can hear that or see it. So there's a much more close connection, which is something totally different, which in my opinion leaves you free to be even more spontaneous. And when the pianist is listening, you can do all kinds of things, and that means artistic or sometimes literal technical trouble that you can be in. Orchestra and the conductor almost will never hear that unless you make it so obvious that they're like looking at you like, okay, go. But in this format, it's so much more intimate and close, and so it makes it something very special, something different.
What do you think makes a good lead pianist?
I would say a lot of
listening. From Essex.
They have to be from Essex. No, it's the listening. It's really the listening. I would say that's the main thing, because it's almost like a duo recital. Obviously, it is a duo recital. Of course, it's vocal music, but it's really a duo recital. If they're not linked, feel it immediately. And even when the audience doesn't necessarily know, they feel it, and they feel the difference when two people are linked up and they're in musical sync, not just rhythmically but emotionally. Then it's very obvious. It changes the whole tone of it. So I think that's the most interesting thing, and probably the most important thing for a singer and pianist playing together.
We were talking a lot about lead. We went for a coffee earlier to catch up and stuff, and we were talking about leader. And what do you feel about flexibility with a pianist and stuff like that?
I think for singers, if they get too indulgent, I think it's actually helpful when the pianist, for example, says, you know what, that might be just a little bit too far. Bring it back. I have a feeling that in the big picture of the song or the whole cycle is going to be painted a little bit better.
Yeah.
And, you know, singers, because it's such a strange instrument, because it's your body, some days you might literally feel heavier or slower, less energy, and it immediately comes out in the way that you're singing. So obviously the pianist can feel that, but I think it's also the job of the pianist to say, I don't think it's going to serve you in the big picture. You need that sometimes
100%.
because you don't always hear yourself. You focus on the sound you're making right at that moment and not the big picture. And I never feel strange if you say, what about this? That was what? It doesn't matter. I like to bounce that back and forth because a lot of the times you don't realize that something can either hold you back or push you forward in the right way.
There's a big always debate, and I've asked, you know, other singers that I've had on this interview series about, do you change your voice when you approach art song?
I say no. No. I think in the old days, I think you know, there's always going to be a debate, like you said.
Yeah.
But I would say probably the most revered singers of lieder and art song and in general, in the old days, they sang with their normal voices.
Yeah.
Now, of course, if you're singing a Verdi opera in a theater, there's going to be a different kind of projection. There's going to be a different kind of way that you're presenting some vocal lines. Now, I think those singers would also sing art song, lieder and everything, and they don't change the production of the voice.
Yeah.
I think they can change some of the declamation of how are they presenting a phrase. I think you need to be sensitive to the style, but I don't think you need to be a slave to the style where you are really changing your vocal emissions. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So, of course, you play for a smaller hall of 100 people. You probably won't go as big as you would in Paris Opera, for example, with 2,700 people. Absolutely, that's true. But I don't think the actual mission of the voice should be changed, really. Okay. You know what I mean? Maybe dynamics, maybe the way you're presenting the phrases, perhaps, but not vocally. I don't think so. I think it's actually more interesting to hear the voice in its full colors. I don't, in my personal opinion, I don't like that someone needs to wear gloves to touch some lieder or something. I sang a lot of Mozart at the beginning of my career. Sometimes if you work with a certain conductor, they really want it like, you know, just, you know, and I never could do that. I sang it full. I think Mozart probably would have liked that in my personal opinion, because this is a lusty, passionate composer, and just because it's so elegant doesn't mean that it's not passionate. Yeah. So I believe lieder is the same exact way.
What is it you like about lieder though? Because obviously so much of your career has been opera. Yeah. And what draws, because you love lieder, don't you?
I love it. Since I first started.
You love it. Yeah. And I feel like everyone knows you so much as such a star opera singer. What is it about lieder that you love and think is so important to get out to people?
It's funny, when you do these big operas, you've got the one story and it's very interesting. For example, Don Carlos. Incredible story, incredible opera, 5 acts of glorious music, drama, everything. But you're telling one story. What I like about lieder is there's many sagas in sometimes one song. Yeah. You know, or you just look like with a microscope at one beautiful image from a story. And I think this is super interesting because if you think about it, I don't know, if you're reading an Edgar Allan Poe short story, when you're in it, it's like, this is the most epic thing I've ever read. It doesn't have to be War and Peace, you know what I'm saying? So I feel like lieder is the same way. They're just these kind of epic stories in short form. I find that's also the reason why doing a recital, for example, is very difficult, because it's a lot to handle on your own. If you're singing all night, a whole recital, there's so many stories, ups and downs, soft, bigger, everything. Yeah. So it's like a 5-act opera compacted in a small way. I never get tired of discovering new things. I'll just saying, why didn't I hear this before? You know, and just like, this is incredible.
In the music, you mean?
Yeah, in the music. Or I hear some songs that I never heard from Fauré. I said, why didn't I hear this before? Yeah. And I said, this is incredible. So much to explore, and I feel like it's so many colors you can do. And what I like about this too is every voice is so different.
Yeah.
So you get a completely
Love that.
different palette of colors in a same song if you hear 3 singers do it. I love that.
Yeah,
It's
I
so
love-
great. Well, if you hear a famous tenor aria, Nessun Dorma, of course every voice is different, but it's basically the same. They have to admit their voice in a certain way to sing Nessun Dorma. Some are a little like this, some are a little like that. But with a Schubert song, you can have like 50 different colors from different voices, because it's more focused on the words and the color, and it's not extreme in a sense, so you really get the truth of that singer.
Yeah.
And so it's more varied, and I like that.
I love that as well. Let's make it an interesting answer.
Yeah, for sure.
Look at you. Well. You had it in you.
See, modern tenor's a little smarter than the old days. No, I'm just kidding.
Oh, that's staying in. Certainly when I work at Guildhall, but when I was studying there and when I was the fellow, and, you know, of course, that's when we kind of started working together when I was the junior fellow there. And a lot of the tenors were really like, wow, Charles Castronovo. They were really buzzed about it, you know, and as they should be. And then I said, try working with him. But tenors are so often pressured to push for bigger sounds early in their careers. How did you develop your voice sustainably without forcing it?
Well, I forced it many times, but but you know, it's part of the process sometimes. I always thought about it this way. It's like I have my ideal, perfect finished sound, not of someone else, but of my voice in my brain. I've been trying to achieve that ideal. I feel like I'm never reaching what I want, but it's obviously a long process. It's always more masculine, huge, beautiful, romantic sound more than maybe what I have in reality. But when you have a goal, you always have somewhere to go. If you already think, well, I've already achieved it, there's only one way to go, it's back downhill. So I feel like it's always better to have a goal, you know, that you could never quite reach. It's better going up all the time than feeling you're great and then coming down. But I think with tenors especially, I mean, even my manager who I've been working with for 23 years or something, when I started my career, sing a lot of Mozart, which is very difficult. It really shows a lot, you know, it shows immediately your passaggio. It shows, well, basically it shows everything. You're very naked there with Mozart, because if you have some vocal strange defect or something, or you're not doing your passaggio well, it's evident immediately.
Right.
So it's a good training. But he said, for example, it's so amazing, you know, you're doing great in the Mozart, it's really beautiful, it's so healthy. He said, but no one ever really got famous singing Mozart. And the reason is for that is because you get famous when you sing Tosca, you know, Cavaradossi, or if you sing Bohème. And a lot of times young tenors will want to skip to that earlier than they should. Which is completely understandable because it pushes everything more. But every voice is so different. Now,
never thought about that.
So you know, because and you think, well, okay, I need to slog my way through, you know, I don't know, 10 years of singing Mozart, and you can be respected and you get work and everything good, but it just doesn't cause the buzz that it will if you sing Cavaradossi. You know what I'm saying? So it's tricky because when can I start adding that in? But unfortunately, what happens many times is if it goes too fast, then, you know, in the long run, you can do some damage to yourself. And then there's a whole other side to that, because for me, I was always a lyric tenor, which of course I've grown over time. I've matured. My voice has gotten bigger. It's getting a little bit more strong and all that stuff. But there are some singers, you don't need to sing Mozart. If by nature you have a more full or lyric voice, I don't know who created the rule book, but I don't believe that it means you have to sing Mozart when you're younger. If that's not the nature of your voice, I don't think you need to do that. So if someone comes with a natural voice that is perfect for singing the young, bigger lyric roles like a Bohème, then they should start there. I mean, I don't think you must start with Mozart, not at all. But I would say the majority of young tenors will be more light lyric at the beginning. It doesn't mean you have to stay there, you know, but you have to go slow. And I also feel that singing is a little bit like working out. So, for example, when you're exercising, first time you're exercising and you do, I don't know, 10 kilos you can curl on a bar. So you think, okay, after 10 reps, I feel it, but it's not so
Yeah.
hard. But if you stay like that for a year, you'll be strong, but you won't gain the muscle.
Right.
You have to go up to 20.
Yeah, like,
So,
So,
okay,
progressive weight
that's
training
a little
vibes,
bit heavy for me,
Yeah, yeah.
and I was sore for 2
Yeah.
days. But that's how you build the muscle.
Yeah.
I think singing's the same. You have to sometimes do a calculated stretch where you say, okay, I'm going to sing a role that maybe is like, I'm ready for it. It's not going to hurt me, but maybe it's not going to be perfect for me. You stretch a little, you try it, you put it away. Sometimes it's just with your teacher. Sometimes it's enough to try it somewhere, in a small house, for example, or in a concert, try a new aria. You stretch, okay, you were fine. You say, okay, wasn't perfect. It's maybe not perfect set, but I stretched, I tried it, now you come back. And that's how you build the muscle also. So I feel it's exactly the same way with singing. You need to do calculated stretch, a bit of risk, then come back. Then you move forward again. Then you come back. Then you move forward. I've been doing it my whole career. It served me pretty well. I've been singing 25 years professionally, and my voice is pretty healthy. Sometimes I sing hard things and I think, wow, I wish I could sing something easier again. But that's how it goes sometimes.
Mary had a little lamb?
Yeah, exactly. Happy birthday. But I can speak especially for young tenors. It's a method that will keep you growing, even if you feel it's at a slower pace. I remember when I was younger, I thought, it's kind of slow, but everyone's totally different. It's better to go a little slower and be healthy. I've had many colleagues, and I'm saying this from honesty, not about, fishing for compliments, but I met many,
Not like you.
met so many, as I was starting my career and moving on through my career, so many singers who were extremely naturally talented, like a lot.
Yeah.
I mean, vocally, just like, wow, I wish I could do what they do by nature, how they do it. There's so many more aspects. They went too fast, and then 6 years later, they're gone. There's many aspects. So it's better, even if you're extremely talented, just step by step. Definitely. I found that that's really the best way to go if you want to have a long career.
Well, that's surely what everyone would hope for.
Yeah, some people don't think of it that way. Or, when you're young, you feel stronger. You feel like you can do everything.
Yeah.
But eventually also the body says, you have to rely on a lot of things, not just the youth and strength of just nature. Because it does change. And with the repertoire, you have to start finding what was easier for me in my earlier days are sometimes a little tricky for me now. The things that were hard for me then, I'm also much better at. So it's always a balance.
I think a lot of people would be very interested to know, when you get a new score, how do you approach it? What do you do? What is your, preparation? That's
a great question. I think I found, speaking with teachers that are out and about these days and in conservatories or schools, wherever, universities, I've been noticing, I can't say it's every teacher, but I've been noticing that a lot of teachers are telling singers to not listen to singers.
Oh.
And I have a big issue with this.
Same. Yeah.
Because
we're on the same page.
Yeah. Okay, good. Because for me, singing is an art. It's very technical, obviously, but everyone does it a different way because you have a different body. You feel very different. There's different approaches. Some people are more mental about it when they teach. The singers understand this way, but not that way. But the core of it is it's a tradition. So if you want to be a famous tennis player, you must see the greats play tennis to see who came before you, what they do. So now, of course, if you're a young tenor and you only listen to Pavarotti, I can see how that could somehow affect you because you're going to try to mimic. My thing was I listened to every tenor I could find.
Yeah.
And there was many I thought, I'm not crazy about them, but I listened to what they do. And I made it a goal to find at least one thing that I liked. And sometimes it was simple as their oo vowel is really amazing. Yeah. I love their oo vowel. I don't like this or that, but that oo vowel is wow.
Yeah.
So I would try to take something positive from it. The only way to do that is to listen constantly. Yeah. When I was in university starting, I literally had headphones on all the time and a score in my face. So you learn not only about the different styles and of vocal emissions. There's these kind of tenors and that kind of tenor. This one is more steely and kind of bright, and this one's more deep and you start understanding everything only after you listen many hours. Because at first you think, oh, this one and that one. No, after a while you start to get it. Once you get it, you start picking up the style and the methods. This one's like that, this one's like, and then you start to analyze yourself. Where do I fit in? I actually kind of by nature a little bit more this way than that way. You can take a little bit from everything, but listening to me is the key. You must do this if you want to be a good singer. You have to listen to the greats that were before you. There's no other way to do it. Because we're basically, even when you start singing, you want to be an opera singer, right? Yeah. So you can take lessons and the teachers can say, do this and do that and all the fine. But it's like speaking in the sense that when you're a baby and you start learning how to speak, you're mimicking. You hear something and you're trying to mimic the sound. Singing, for me, is exactly the same. First, you need to mimic to understand what this kind of sound is. Then, of course, with your teacher, you try to learn better technique. You do this and this. But the point is, what your ear tells your brain how to try to create this. So you must listen. This is, for me, one of the most important things any singer can do, but especially younger singers. Especially,
so when you're preparing a score, you listen to it all?
Yeah,
and then what do you do?
I look at the score just to see what's kind of musically happening, what kind of part it is. And then I listen, but I don't listen to one recording. I listen to many. Yeah. So I listen to, everyone's approach to that particular role. Some people do it slower, this one, and faster, this one, and this, blah, blah, blah. And I just start to let it sink in, and then I start practicing it myself with a coach, make sure I get musically every corner right, and so on and so forth. But after I've already absorbed the different approaches to it, and I'll listen to my favorite tenors, or if I find someone, I don't know them that well, let's hear how they do it. I take that because it's just going to help. It's funny because, like, for example, in a couple seasons, I'm going to try a Verdi role that's very famous, infamous even, and it's been done by, let's say, more full lyric tenors all the way to dramatic tenors, right? So when I know the opera very well because it's famous, and I'm not going to say it yet. So. But 27. Anyway, but so I'm looking at this and I think, okay, how can I approach this? If I listen to Delmonico sing that role, I listen to the recording, I think, I'm not sure this role's for me. Right. Because it's a dramatic, muscular voice. And I think, not sure. Then I think, okay, just relax. I see the music. I can do this. Then I listen to Bergonzi sing this role, and it's more lyric and full and bel canto, and I think, oh, I can sing this role. Actually, will be good for me. So there's so many approaches and so many methods to do this. As long as you're bringing your honest voice to it, then it can work very well. So.
Can I ask you a technical question? Yeah. I want to ask you something, because one of my favourite things about your particular singing, especially when I see you, like last night, Don Carlos, one thing I was absolutely stunned by is your ability to do pianissimo and to do it over the orchestra. We can still hear you.
That's good.
Big
opera house, big
orchestra.
Oh
my God, you're funny. But really, I'm always floored by that, because a lot of people can sing big, and that's great. I think the mark of a true artist and someone who's really in control technically of their instrument, on any instrument, is doing pianissimos, really controlled. And you don't just do it, you can absolutely do it over the orchestra, no problem.
How? How do I do that?
How?
Okay, I'll say two things about it. First one, in all honesty, there's a bit of nature there.
Right.
Every singer has at least one or two things where you're like, damn it, they just know how to do that. Yeah. Sometimes it's literally nature. Yeah. And I always had a good piano singing. I don't know where that came from, because it was a lot of Mozart I sang, and I always had a knack for being able to do that. I had to learn how to keep it going even when I started singing bigger roles and as the voice grew and everything like that. But I've been able to keep it because there's some nature there. The other part of that is technically I've learned how to relax the voice in a certain way still kind of staying connected. And it's funny enough that there's been many times I've been in rehearsals, like an orchestra rehearsal, but a few days before the premiere. So you're singing, but you're kind of taking it easy.
Yeah.
For example, I was singing Ballo at the Met one time a couple of years ago. Some of the pianists are out there listening to checking for balances and everything. And I was just kind of like doing 30% that day because we had a lot of orchestra rehearsals. I was taking it easy. So I was singing some bits kind of in that.
Yeah.
I won't say it's half voice, but it's like just not fully engaged because I was like, okay, I need to take it easy. And then in the break, the pianist came to me and he said, I don't know what you were doing, but like literally, if you sang like more than half of the opera that way, it would be incredible. Because he said it was just riding right over the orchestra.
Yeah.
And it was very beautiful.
Yeah.
Of course, you can't do that in every scene because some scenes require this.
Yeah.
And so I just tried to remember this feeling and I use that when possible or when it's appropriate.
Yeah.
The funny thing is though that by instinct, because I'm kind of an emotional singer
You are.
on stage.
Oh God, yeah,
so
yeah,
sometimes I have to really check my emotions because it can push me sometimes too far in one direction.
Yeah.
So sometimes when I use that piano, I always have a little demon in my head, a little devil saying, maybe it's not enough. They're not going to hear you because I want to stay there. But usually I guess it's heard, but there's always something that makes me think I'm being selfish and I'm not giving enough.
Really?
Yeah.
I find that really interesting to think you're so experienced. So it's funny
but it
it's
feels like I'm not being generous and I try to be generous when I sing. Not flashy, but generous.
Yeah.
And sometimes when I do that, I think, am I faking it if I'm not, you know what I'm saying?
I do.
But nowadays I'm a little bit more confident, doing that in certain moments where I know that it's going.
Yeah.
So, and it creates a different mood also. It's a different color. So sometimes it's very useful. Yeah.
Oh, definitely. I mean, gosh,
Yeah.
I think everyone's going to die to hear about how to do pianissimo singing.
Yeah. I mean, in a technical explanation, I would say, especially when it's higher, I just think that it's going in that direction with the voice. So I don't try to make it small. I sing it normal, but I just kind of try to imagine that it's flying away that way. So it still stays connected, but it's got more of a, I would say, dome. That's the word I use. And that usually is what carries it well, while still staying round. So it doesn't get small.
Yeah.
I mean, sometimes it happens, you don't feel perfect one day and it gets a little thready, it can happen to anyone. But when it works well, it's still rounded, but it kind of fades away that way.
Yeah.
And you don't need to keep it here. So technically, that's what I would say.
That is £50, please. A lot of young singers struggle with confidence, I think, in delivering text authentically, because the sound and the technique is so important. But of course, the text, it's so important.
Yeah.
And so many young singers, I feel, they worry so much about good technique and a beautiful sound that it can sometimes be at the expense of the text.
Yeah.
What are your tips for making the storytelling feel authentic, personal, and natural?
I'll go back a little bit and reference the listening thing. For example, I sing a lot of French opera also. I'll pat myself on the back, but usually I get a lot of compliments that my French is very good, for example.
Yes.
I'm not a native French speaker at all. I can speak a bit of French, but my pronunciation when I sing is excellent because, I worked on it a lot, but also because I listen. There's one thing to pronounce something correctly, and there's another thing to know the color of the language, especially when you're singing.
Yes.
Which I believe you can only get from listening.
Absolutely.
Constantly. Once you start to understand the color,
It's like when a person's speaking, sorry to interrupt you.
No, not at all.
But I totally resonate with that. It's like, I think of myself as an English person, there's certain inflections you put on words, and when you hear someone like who's foreign then speak the same thing, and they don't put the same inflections, and then suddenly the sentence doesn't make sense, and you're like, oh gosh.
And even when someone speaks perfect English, if the color's not there, you can tell immediately.
You can. It's such a good thing to say.
It takes time to do this, and some people are more naturally gifted with making the color of language than others. I think listening has a lot to do with it. When I realized that I was going to be singing French opera, I listened to so many French singers, or singers who are maybe not necessarily French, but extremely famous for French repertoire. But I think when you can confidently create the color of the language, then you immediately become more confident. So I think it's more about grasping the real color of the language. It's pretty normal when you're younger, you're thinking about technique and sound more, but over time, I think you start caring about more. That's why we were having a big conversation about the recording industry, and a lot of record labels, they always want to get the young, new, up and coming, you know, star sensation. I had a conversation with someone who is a big boss of recording company, and he said, but you know, sometimes the younger singers, they have amazing voices and talent, but they don't have much to say artistically. And I thought to myself, of course. You need these years of, you know, being an artist, where you start to figure out your real color, what you have to say. There's a uniqueness in every voice, and when you embrace that, then you start getting an artist. So I really get it. You find the new sensational blah blah blah. Of course, it's exciting. But I mean, we're also talking about art here. I'm not even talking about myself. I mean, many artists nowadays, you know, incredible artists, they're not recording, who've been singing for 20 something years. And I think to myself, how is this possible? And the older people get, I mean, of course, if they're in good shape and vocally, then the more interesting it is. That's a part of our business, which is a little bit askew, in my opinion. When you get the color, everything starts to change. And then you can worry about everything equally instead of just one thing, you know. So but it can also be very positive, because when you have the confidence of how you pronounce everything and you know it's good, again, more colors, more nuance, more liberty to create something.
Get your money's worth here, aren't you? Don't go shy. Oh god, we managed to get through it without cracking a load of jokes. I don't know how we've done that.
No, I got serious.
Well, my last question. What advice would you give a young tenor who's trying to find their own unique artistic identity in a world where so many singers, I think, feel very pressured to fit a mold?
I could blame that on several things. I mean, there's the tradition. You want to be a Pavarotti type, you want to be a Corelli type, you want to be a Caruso type. I always find that this is not helpful if a singer is compared with another great singer. Even when it's considered a compliment, which is great. It's lovely, of course. But I don't think it's fair, really, because it puts a kind of pressure on a singer to be like some great singer of the past, a completely different person. I get it. The compliment is very nice, and people will say, wow. But I think in the big picture, it's not necessarily the most positive. I think with young tenors especially, the main thing is not to feel that they have to fit this mold of going to immediately the romantic parts that are these flashier parts that you get famous with. If you're starting in that rep, perfect. But if you're not, it's totally fine. There are so many things where you can really learn your craft and be respected as a singer. You have to figure out your voice, though, because it can be very difficult. I remember when I was in the Met program, when I was younger, there was probably 5 very important people at the Met that you would coach with sometimes, or, you know, who would give you advice and hear you all the time. And so I was there. Let's say there's 5. I mean, maybe there were even more, but guess what? All 5 of them told me something totally different. You should sing only Mozart. This one say, oh no, you're definitely going to sing Romeo and all this romantic French stuff. The other one said, you'll never sing anything more than Mozart. That's too heavy for you. Then the next one say, oh, you're going to sing Verdi. If you're a people pleaser, for example, your voice is going in 6 directions in the end of 1 month. You know what I mean? So,
that's good advice.
Again, the only way to start to really understand your voice is to see where you fit in. You have to know all the voices in your voice category. So if you're a tenor, you listen from the lightest tenor ever to the heaviest tenor ever. And you learn those words. I used to play a game with myself all the time that with friends would say, put on tenors. I do it with my partner too. She said, okay, who's this? And she'll play something, and 9 out of 10 times, I know who it is in the first 3 notes.
Tenors are such losers. This is such a tenor thing to do.
For tenors. I'm also not bad with other voice types, but mostly with tenors.
God, tenors are a breed. It's such a tenor move.
You know, I know it. Within 2-3 notes, I'm like, Björling. You know what I mean? So
should we try it now?
And I probably would do fine. But of course, voices are extremely unique, and you can sometimes tell. So I would say the only way to achieve your own kind of unique sound is that you know all the other sounds, and then you're, confident in your own nature. And of course, you can adjust. Oh, I don't like how I do this. Yeah, you can do things with yourself. Not in the street. If you're a Rossini tenor, you're not going to sing, Wagner maybe.
Yeah.
Okay, that's one thing, but it doesn't mean that you can't find new ways to create your own natural sound. I really believe that. And also, there's a big tradition, depending on where you do things. Like, for example, in the old days, someone like Tito Schipa, very light lyric tenor, beautiful legato, the word incredible, but very light. But if you look at his old schedule, you can find it, what he sang in 2 weeks. He would sing Rossini Almaviva and then sing Werther. A few days later, he'll sing a Tosca and then he'll sing La Sonnambula. Yeah. And you're just like, this is crazy. People don't do this now. But back then it was very normal because he sang with his own voice. In his way. I'm stepping into this Fach and changing the vocal emission. He just sang with his voice. And I think we've lost a little bit of that. I think recently I've seen people crossing over more, which I find is a positive thing because there's so many traditions. For example, Werther. There's been heavier tenors to do it, and there's been much lighter tenors to do it. And why not? It's just a different way. You might like this one, but there's a big tradition for this side too. You just have to be honest about your limitations, which is hard to do. Sometimes I have to remind myself, take it easy. It's fine. You can maybe try something later. The stretch again, building muscle.
You have done Bohème so many times.
Yeah, quite a few times, yeah.
And I feel like a lot of young tenors will start off learning Bohème.
Oh, the aria.
Yeah. What are your things you'd say watch out for in that and think about if you were going to approach that?
I've only had 2 teachers my whole life. My first teacher for a few years, then I'd stopped seeing him too much because I was starting my career and traveling. And then I had my teacher the last, 8-9 years now. Also, I see here and there. I think with both of them, they always do something that I think is very interesting. So we'll work on the repertoire that was appropriate for me. Let's say in the old days, it was a lot of Mozart and some bel canto, blah, blah, blah. When we did good work on it, my teacher would say, okay, let's sing this aria from Andrea Chenier, which is a dramatic tenor or spinto role. But it was for fun, and it gives you a bit of hope and makes you dream. You're not going to hurt yourself to sing one aria. You're not going to damage your voice. Do it. Let the voice out. You need to do this sometimes. Yeah. And then you're not going to do it in a concert. You're not going to do it on stage. Just do this. It's a way to keep the blood flowing, to keep the dream alive in a way, to keep you hungry. If you're just great at what you do all the time and you don't have a kind of, I grew up in the 80s, it's like Eye of the Tiger. You have to be a little bit hungry to continue somewhere. That's extremely important to do. And for example, with Bohème, I think a young tenor should definitely work on it. Definitely. Doesn't mean you do it in public yet.
Right.
Do it in your lessons. Do it when you're practicing by yourself. I would say don't create a bigger, fatter sound than you need. Just do it with your voice. It will grow. Yeah, by nature.
I've asked you all the tenor questions. All the tenors are going to be like, happy.
That's good. What about a question for you? Actually, I was thinking about, because we have other projects in the future that, our minds are already thinking of things to do for recordings and everything. Yeah. But I wanted to ask you, I don't know all of your musical tastes completely. When you're approaching a new, let's say, not even a new composer, but like a new project, and it's, let's say, French song, for example, and let's say you've been, for the last few years, more known for English and German lieder, for example. How do you approach? Do you just think, oh, it's just another piece to play? What do you consider before you feel appropriate? Because, for example, if someone told me I want to do some cabaret songs on the recital, I would say, I don't think I could convince anyone because I can't convince myself.
Right.
But do you question yourself with any kind of repertoire, or how do you approach it then if you want to try something new?
Yeah, I personally don't ever question myself on that. And I'm actually quite a question myself human being, to be honest. I'm very overthinking, but I always have this open mind of, right, I'll just try it. And then if it doesn't work, I won't do it.
Okay.
But like you, I'm very big into the listening, because I think that will always give you the best stylistic element, is listening to lots of things from the genre. But I'm very big into researching the context. So the time period,
Yeah.
what's happening at the time.
Yeah.
And I really spend a lot of time looking at the words and blah, blah, blah. But I very rarely, I can't think of many things that I would turn down. And I'm talking from every scope, from lieder to opera to musical theatre to pop to jazz. I'll try my hand at it because I think one thing I pride myself on is I'm quite versatile as an artist. I feel quite happily try and turn my hand to anything.
That's cool.
So
lucky.
I'm just a girl.
Yeah.
But I do always at least give things a try, because I think you can research your way and listen your way. Very much we're the same, like that. We've always been the same. I always just listen to a lot. But the other thing I always do is I take it to one of my teachers.
Yes.
And I really find out from them the stylistic requirements and everything else. And that seems to work very well.
So there is that technical part, but also there's just an approach like, let's just try. So I mean, why not?
Yeah, I think so.
And then you decide, you're honest with yourself, I guess. If something doesn't feel right.
I have to, in my absolute honest truth is I have not been given something yet where I've said, no, I can't do that. If I'm honest.
Yeah, great.
But I'm a very like, I'll just try it. And I'm also a person who's very like, if I want to do something, if I really want to do it, I will bloody well get up every day at 5 a.m. and get it done, sort of human being.
That's good.
And, you know, I feel a bit, that's just my vibe and nature. So I feel like the listening, I completely agree, is the most important thing. Because I remember I used to maybe not have the best technique, because I came into classical music so differently from other people. I came into it all from listening by ear to things. I was 17 before I even went into classical music. And then I was 21 when I started working with singers. Although I think working with singers lends a lot better to an older pianist, as in not an undergraduate pianist, in my opinion, because I feel you have to be quite a mature person to work with singers. Not because they're hard to work with, apart from you. I love singers. But, you know, you have to be a rock of sense and support for someone who's about to go on stage and do something extraordinarily vulnerable, exposing, difficult, and dependent on the day of how they feel. So you need to be very much, don't worry, everything's going to be okay. I'm here to support you. I think that's a big part of it, right?
Big time,
You know what I mean?
I mean, some singers more than others.
100%. But, and you have to be able to adapt to different people. And it's a really interesting job like that. I think a lot of it is about being a really good people person as much as it is a experienced collaborative pianist. But I definitely think the most important thing is listening to all the styles and just trying your hand at things as well.
It's when you bring a new color to it. Like, people don't usually cast me in German roles, for example. I do Italian and French stuff, but actually I have a real feeling for it. I would love to do it, but sometimes you have to push yourself out there in these ways before someone considers, actually, that was nice.
You know
what I mean? So, or they say, okay, it's not the normal sound, but very good, you know, or whatever. So I think I always find that interesting.
But,
good. So cabaret songs, next album. No? Just kidding.
Bit of jazz. What is it you love? You love them. What's it you call it? Yacht rock.
Oh, yacht rock.
What's that?
I was born in the 70s. What do you expect?
Oh, that's funny. We always have that on in the car, don't we, when we're going somewhere? But I always finish with a rogue question.
Okay, rogue question.
A silly question.
All right.
So let me think of one. Okay. What is your favourite hot beverage? And why? That's what I mean.
I'm a coffee person. I love tea.
You love coffee.
I love tea, but I'm definitely a coffee person.
You love a British tea?
Sure. I like tea in general. I really do. Do. But yeah, if you forced me, I'm definitely a coffee person.
Yeah, you love it. You like, but we were talking when we were when we did the Tosti album, because I remember we were in the Alps doing it. It was so nice. And I remember we had lovely coffee every day.
It was great.
But we were talking about, do you remember I'd read an article at the time that says if you drink black coffee, it means you're a psychopath.
Oh, right. Yeah.
Do you remember? It makes sense.
What?
Oh my god.
No, yeah, well, black coffee is great. I actually removed sugar a few years ago. I don't.
Did you?
Not completely, but in coffee. I don't have sugar in coffee.
I saw you eat a cake this morning.
No,
but...
I'll eat a sweet, but I won't put it in the coffee.
Oh, I was going to say, I was like, well, I saw you
coffee.
eating a cake this morning. So
Just black coffee. That's it.
No, I like black
coffee. I love it. And you know, even though I really appreciate really good coffee, I'm not a complete coffee snob. Like, ugh, you know, I'll have a normal Nespresso from the, you know, that's the, you know, it's fine. Sometimes I just need the coffee, but of course I prefer something other. I'm into French roast right now. That's my thing.
Oh yeah, of course.
So yeah, so I like that.
I love a green tea.
Also very good.
You know how I love. I drink it by the gallon. I have 7 cups a day.
Oh my gosh.
Is that crazy?
No,
do you judge? Are you going to sack me now?
No.
Get out of here.
They say people who are really crazy drink a lot of green tea. And
they say girls
it's beyond psychopath.
Yay.
Boom.
Let's
Nice.
go.